Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the webinar on EB-5 investment opportunity in real estate technology. We're glad that you could join us today. We have many registrations for today's webinar and most of the registered participants have already joined. So let's get the ball rolling. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a quick overview of the agenda and introduce our panelists. The EB-5 program is a way for foreign nationals to obtain permanent residence in the USA. There have been some recent changes in the rules pertaining to EB-5. Time is running out since new regulations will come into effect in November 2019. We will learn how this impacts EB-5 investors during this webinar. PropMix, which is an artificial intelligence and machine learning technology provider for the real estate industry in the US, is raising EB-5 capital as part of its growth strategy. PropMix serves the mortgage appraisal broker and agents and the real estate investor community with groundbreaking insights and solutions. You will learn more on how PropMix.io is reshaping the PropTech business. It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for the day. Mona Shah Esquire is a recognized industry leader in EB-5 law. Her firm has attained many accolades and awards. She was voted top 25 EB-5 attorneys by the EB-5 Investors magazine 5 years in a row. And she also founded the first EB-5 regional center in New York City, which has raised over $1 billion from EB-5 investors in the past 4 years. Along with Mona, we have Dr. Umesh Harigopal, who is the CEO of PropMix.io LLC and managing partner and president of Innovation Incubator Group of Companies. He has more than 25 years of experience in financial services and entrepreneurship and has worked with Freddie Mac, JP Morgan, Chase, Citi, and Dow Jones, and has founded companies in healthcare and real estate. He holds a PhD in computer science and has extensive research and industry experience in cognitive science. We expect the presentation to be around 45 minutes, followed by Q&A for 10 minutes. But if you have questions, please do use the chat option to send your questions, and we'll take them up as they come along. And we will also cover some of these questions at the end of the presentation. With that, over to you, Mona and Umesh.
Sakir, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Umesh, it's a pleasure to be speaking on this interesting topic. We have a lot to talk about. Audience, please give us your questions as you go along. I know they have put some time aside at the end, but I'm sure there'll be issues that might come up as we speak.
Thank you, Mona. Yeah, good to be here. Excited to share some of the information about our companies as well as the opportunity with EB-5. Like Sakir was mentioning, we are going to start off with some of the EB-5 program-related information that Mona is so good at, and she's going to share some other information with you all. And then we'll explain to you a little bit about what PropMix is all about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with, I'm pretty sure most of you understand a lot about the EB-5 program, but just in case you don't, please bear with me. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the EB-5 program is here where we are today. I know they've put some slides about us on the screen. Please ignore. All right. So there's three real ways of immigrating to the United States for an immigrant visa. You have your traditional way, which is a family petition. You have another way, which is basically self-employed, is if you are a research scientist or person of extraordinary ability, that's classed as what's called an EB-1A. And then you have the employment-based area, which is where the EB comes from. So the EB has 5 categories. EB-1 is for extraordinary ability, people of sort of high stature in companies overseas, and research people, etc. EB-2 and EB-3, which is the traditional way for many Indians to have got their green cards in the United States. EB-2 is skilled workers. EB-3 is an unskilled worker. EB-4 is for special workers like religious people and battered spouse. And then you have the EB-5, which is the immigrant investment program. Immigrant investment program is not new. It's something which has been around in many countries. More than 25, 30 countries utilize this. It's growing. It's a way of bringing in income. Canada and America is a little different. They get a little stuffy if you say that we're bringing in income, so they don't allow you to say it's citizenship by investment. This is residency, and then you have to fulfill a criteria. For the United States, the criteria is to invest as an entrepreneur. This is an entrepreneur program, which is why everything is at risk. Your investment is at risk because the basis of this program is a at-risk entrepreneur program. So you're allowed to obtain a green card. It goes in two stages. You get a conditional green card initially, and then followed on by a permanent green card and an ability to file for citizenship. Once you have invested in what's called new commercial enterprise, and that new commercial enterprise creates or invests within a project or finds a way to create 10 jobs per investor. The easiest way at this point, and what you're hearing a lot, are people who are coming to around the world, going around the world with their own projects, looking for investors to come into their pre-designed program, which will give you a passive investment, but also allow you to avail the opportunities of getting a green card. Although I'm saying it's sounding like it's at risk and it sounds a little difficult, at this point, America has to be one of the cheapest in the whole world. It's cheaper than even some of the European countries, and of course, the benefits of living into America are don't compare. So that's a little bit about the overview of the EB-5 program. So I know, Sakir, you mentioned from the outset that we have changes coming up. This isn't the end of EB-5. The changes were expected. Okay, so a bit of the advantages. Yeah, some people don't realize this, but in other countries, for example, the United Kingdom, which is £2 million, you have to have a language requirement. So there's no language or minimum education requirement required for the United States. It also, people don't realize that one investment of 500,000 includes the entire family sponsorship. That means all children under 21. And believe you me, we've had people who have really availed that with 6 and 7 children. But unfortunately, it only allows you for one wife. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, it only allows you one wife. There's no sponsor required, no business or management experience required. That's very important for people who are in the early stages of their life. You may perhaps they're at university or even pre-university, or who want to retire, or for housewives who just want to have no business experience and who want to have a way to emigrate to the United States. Finally, there's no quota backlog for most countries. I'm saying most countries because unfortunately India, Vietnam and China right now are facing backlogs. But we will have a chance to discuss some of the issues relating to backlogs in a little while. Yeah, one of the reasons why invest in the United States, most people want to invest. I really don't need to explain for most of you, but why invest is not necessarily just for education, but it is one of the easiest places in the world to do business. It's one of the easiest places to open a bank accounts and actually move, cash around, and as well as the ability to go into almost any industry that you like. And it's constantly ranked at the top by all the award people for being the best for ease of doing business. Of course, you know that the GDI, the FDI is right up there as well when it comes to the United States. So there are different EB-5 investment routes. There are 3. They're all entrepreneurial. Direct investment if you want to do your own, but you have to work in your own. Pooled investment if you want to work with other people within your own or within within a project which is not affiliated with a regional center or a regional center project. The advantage of going into a regional center project, which 95% of the investments are, is because it's a passive investment. You do not have to have much management requirement. It's minimal management requirement. But the most important thing is that you can count indirect and induced jobs. And as the most important thing here is for you to obtain your green card, it's a good idea to make sure that you're in a project where there is sufficient job count. But one of the biggest problems that we have when people are doing their own project is the cost of jobs. Right. People don't realize at 500,000 what a minimal amount it is when it comes to actually doing a project. If you have your own project and you want to have 2 or 3 employees, I'm sure you're going to make a success of it. Once you with 500,000. However, once you start 10 full-time jobs, the cost certainly comes up, and it's only certain type of businesses which really work, which is why it makes sense many times to go into a regional center type of program. All right, I'm going to jump forward to this slide, but just as a brief overview for you, the most important thing to understand is that there are 3 steps required when we do EB-5. It's not like you file and you get your green card immediately. Once you file and you've engaged your attorney and you've confirmed your project and you've transferred your full amount of money into the project escrow account most of the time, and we file your petition. We have unfortunately a couple of years waiting period at this point. That's just due to backlogs. I can tell you, anybody who deals with the United Kingdom or with Canada, government delays are government delays, and we can jump up and down and scream and promise all we like, but there really isn't any way around it. So anybody who's here on H-1Bs, for example, you have to maintain status at this point until you get to the point where you get your petition approved and you can file for an EAD. We have been pushing to get concurrent filing, which will allow you to file for an EAD at the same time that you file for your EB-5 petition. This is not the law right now, and we're hoping that it will come in at some point. We do have draft legislation pending, and we're hoping that we can push the draft legislation through and get these important issues out for our investor clients. Once you have had your USCIS decision affirming that you have an approved I-526, we can then go to the next step, which is to get you your actual green card, and you get that either through adjustment of status if you're in the United States or through consular processing if you're outside of the United States. And sometimes we look to see the benefits. Sometimes it benefits you to do consular processing more than adjustment. Consular processing does have an interview, whereas adjustment does not, and often that really is a deciding factor for some people, but not everybody can just apply for adjustment just like that. So once you have your green card, at this point your time for citizenship starts ticking. It's maybe a conditional green card, but it is the same privileges and it's the same rights that you would have if you had a normal 10-year green card. Anybody who knows somebody who's got a petition through marriage, it works in the same way. You get a conditional green card for 2 years, and after 2 years you have to file to remove the conditions. Here the conditions are that the 10 jobs have been created and that your money has been sustained in the project and that you haven't committed any felonies on the way. At that point, we file, after 2 years, we file the I-829 application, which is the final application. At this point, technically, you are entitled to have to be able to reclaim your money. You can get your money back from the project, or you can leave it in the project until the USCIS decision for the I-829 goes through. And at this point, once your USCIS decision is there, you're usually very, very close to being able to file for the time-wise, being able to file for citizenship. So that's a very brief overview of the immigration process timeline and over the EB-5, and of course we're here to take any questions, but I'd like to get into what this whole seminar is really about, and that's the kind of projects that you can choose out there and really how tech projects can work with EB-5. So if somebody has been doing any research into EB-5, the first thing that would probably hit you is that 90% of the projects tend to be real estate related. And that's interesting because when EB-5 first began, real estate really was not there. Real estate came by, but back in 2008, 2009, when we had that big crash, and suddenly there was these buildings and these half-done hotels popping up all over the country because construction loans all dried up, banks weren't helping out, etc. And people were worried about other manufacturing projects as to whether or not they would have the ability to repay, because manufacturing has an issue relating often to the fact that there's a lot of manpower there, and would there be the ability to repay. So there was a big push to have real estate projects counted as EB-5, and it was actually a senator from Texas, Senator Cornyn, who wrote to USCIS requesting that construction jobs be considered. So for a job to be considered in EB-5, it must be permanent, and up until that point, construction job was not considered a permanent job. It was fleeting. And at that point, then USCIS then rechanged some of the regulations and allowed us to be able to count construction jobs as permanent if the construction lasted more than 2 years. If it lasted less than 2 years, then they would have to be counted as indirect, and you'd have to use the regional center route only. So the point that at that point, the real estate developers really hijacked the program, and we started seeing huge mega projects pop up all over the country, mostly in big cities like New York City. New York City, we've got so many huge projects which were done through utilizing EB-5 funding, and people felt comfortable because they were real estate, because they were bricks and mortar. But what they didn't realize was really they were not buying, the investment was not buying the bricks and mortar. The investment was a loan, and most of the time as a mezzanine loan, which is one of the most riskiest part of the program, or a part of an investment. And and when problems happened with real estate, such as delays or funding problems or zoning issues, everything would be affected. And over the last few years, we've started to see a number of other projects, not really related to real estate construction, come into the market. And these projects do include things like pharmaceutical and manufacturing, technology. And now for the first time, we're really seeing technology come in. And I don't think technology can be underplayed. Well, that's enough of me speaking. I have a lot of questions to ask of you, Umesh. Perhaps do you have any comments on anything I've said so far?
No, actually, I just want to add one item on the direct versus the regional center EB-5. One of the things that, as I've come across hearing from other folks, potential investors, has been that when you go down the path of direct EB-5, there's a lot of paperwork to be done before you can get to file your I-526, and that includes paperwork about the project as well, right? Typically what happens is when you come to a regional center, the project that is presenting itself is actually doing a lot of the offering documentation, the PPMs and the private placement documentation, all that stuff, right? As opposed to the direct EB-5 case, the investor or the EB-5 candidate becomes responsible for all that. So that in effect increases the expense also, right? I mean, is that the right?
Well, I think I'd like to explain that point to you. What we're trying to say is that if it's your own project, or maybe if you're going to somebody's pool project and it doesn't have offering documents, the investor has less protection because you don't have the same securities protection. It is a securities offering. So technically you are supposed to have an offering document if you're seeking investment. You are correct to a certain degree. However, there are big, large-scale pooled projects out there where they have used offering documents. I think really the important thing to understand is when you do your own project, the difficulty and the expense involved in having the employment or the amount of employment that you have to generate, that really is your disadvantage with a direct project. Otherwise, or the fact that if somebody's doing their own, maybe they're partnering with a friend, there really aren't any protections as far as using private placement memorandums.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm always learning too.
Yeah, no, there's advantages and disadvantages. I've had many a conversation and a podcast. We run this podcast series, and I've had other lawyers on there, and we've had lawyers who've said, "Oh, I like direct better because you can always add jobs." Well, yeah, no, you can do that too. So there's advantages and disadvantages. But in a project like yours, technology, you're not counting that many direct jobs. You don't want to count that many direct jobs because you're taking away from the actual amount of money you'll be making. And that's why it is really in your interest to be able to count indirect and induced jobs. So coming back to just the issue about choosing a project, Umesh, people are listening and they often shake their head and will say, well, you know what? I still don't feel comfortable. Tech is so risky. You can make it. You have the big guys, the Airbnb and all of the other sort of big time projects which have been out there, and WeWorks and things like that, who have made it. But there are many failures in technology as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Many startups actually go through this cycle, and many startups do fail as well. Absolutely, and that kind of accounts for the risk part of EB-5, I guess. But on the other hand, the projects that we are talking about in PropTech, which is the real estate technology, in other words, property technology or PropTech, plus the combination of that, the challenges in PropTech, and the new technology that is coming about, this artificial intelligence and blockchain that we are working on within PropMix. This is the future of technology, and this is the future of the industry, not just technology, right? We are on the verge of, or we are already experiencing the beginnings of a huge industrial revolution, and caused by artificial intelligence and all the automation possible, right? So while it is normally pretty risky to put money in a startup, at the same time, if somebody had put money into a car company in the 1910s or the 1920s, it would have fared pretty well potentially, right? So
yeah. Well, there's a reason why over $12 billion globally has been put into startups and prop tech type startups. So I do appreciate that, what you're saying. I also I often tell my clients who say, oh, I only want to go to a hotel. And I'll say, well, be careful, because why a hotel? Oh, a hotel is safe. Why is it safe? There's so much competition out there, and one should look at each thing carefully. So when we look into a project, it's not necessarily you don't see a little box here which says what makes a good EB-5 project, a construction. No, we don't say that, because we've come across many bad construction real estate type projects. But that's where the good location issue comes into place if you are doing that. What makes a good EB-5 project are many different factors. Management, the kind of the industry that is going on, is the management experience within that industry. Umesh, give me your comments.
Yeah,
how important is management?
Absolutely. I mean, especially when you look at a technology company, if you put a technology lens on this one, it is the management team's experience in running successful startups in the past, and having a network is key. I mean, a new player in the market who comes in, my first startup that I'm working on, as opposed to this is my fourth or fifth startup that I'm working on, makes a huge difference. We all learn in our lives from experience, right? And that matters a lot, that experience and past failures, and you learn from past failures, and that is how we become better investors as well as better company managers, right? So that's the key. And also wanted to add a couple of other things in terms of looking for a good technology project. You do want to look for an awesome track record of an existing company that's actually achieved a real revenue and cash flow, etc., as opposed to putting money into a brand new startup that is at a very beginning stage, right? Meaning you don't want to put money into a startup which is just an idea on a paper napkin, right? You want to put money into a company which is actually functioning, making money, paying its bills, and has been in the industry for a while, right? That kind of experience actually shows that there's a viable company already, right? Another thing would be the intellectual property within that company. What is the intellectual property that's the differentiator? What is the barrier to entry for other competitors to come into the market and compete with this company? Those are the things we want to be looking for, right? From a technology perspective.
Right. Well, yes. I always say when I go back to management, and I look at things like capital stack is something else I really look at. Now, capital stack is some word you might hear a lot when you're talking about real estate projects, because with capital stack, we look at bank financing, equity financing, plus how much EB-5 is. A project like this, which is technology, which doesn't require capital stack in the sense they don't require bank funding. But I like to see that the developers have got some skin in the game, because otherwise nobody wants to just invest into something where the developers haven't put any money in.
That is right. Yeah, that works very much in our favor, actually. we have 100% ownership of PropMix. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, yours, I should actually take a step back. PropMix. PropMix is something which is just connected with real estate. So we're back to our real estate, by the way, guys. Well, we can't get away from it, but it's a different form of real estate. But how, what does PropMix actually mean?
So PropMix plays in what is called PropTech 3.0, right? So there has been the first version of PropTech, which is primarily getting an IDX portal, like a listing portal where you can find homes for sale. And then we went through a PropTech 2.0, which went into some amount of analytics, the reporting engines and stuff like that, and what used to be called business intelligence and knowing how well a business runs. But we are playing in PropTech 3.0, which is all about utilizing AI, deep learning, blockchain kind of technologies to transform the industry completely from multiple perspectives. It is ownership, investment, how do you rent your property, how the property is actually built and continue to be managed. That opens up a whole lot of more opportunities in the marketplace. Fractional ownership, there's a whole iBuyer program that all the big guys are also trying to achieve, but technology is about to transform all that, right? So that is where we play. We have an AI deep learning platform that powers various capabilities for different parts of the real estate industry. On the next slide, we talk about specific target markets that we go after, which is the broker agent relationships that we build. We work with investment advisors, investment management. We'll talk a little bit more about this. And on the lending side, the banks and the appraisal companies, etc., that we work with. And in each of these areas, there are like big opportunities that needs to be plugged, right? Wall Street, which is giving out huge loans, has very little data on which they make decisions, right? And very little insights into data.
So Umesh, what you're saying is that you're addressing a need, a real need.
Absolutely. I mean, these are, that's from a banking perspective, that kind of a need to understand the value of the property in which you're investing. On another side of that need, Mona, is where you look at investors coming into the market or homeowners, where that is their largest investment in their lifetime, their home, which runs into hundreds of thousands of dollars. They'll get very little advice on what to do with the property, when to refinance your home, how do you utilize the equity in your home to go do something else, to pay for education for your children, or to go buy a car which you need badly for your child, maybe, right? So these are things, Mona, where
right.
Nobody giving that kind of advice, right? And our platform is going to cater to these kind of gaps mainly in the market.
Yeah, that's an area which I do see as a growth area, and again, we do see this as something which makes money. But tell me something: people who come into EB-5, they want their green card. That means they have to create the jobs, as well as let's talk about the return of capital in a moment. So, how are jobs created in this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are taking investment into the company right now to hire different types of folks into the company so that we can build up our operations and support people as well as technology folks, right? Those are the areas where we are going to be hiring in the company. We are already a functioning company for the last 3.5 years. We have achieved cash flow positive revenue from large contracts from Fortune 500 companies, where we are generating a cash flow from long-term contracts. These are like 2 to 3 year contracts, and we are primarily a software as a service, right? So our growth opportunity with our company is like a real exponential growth as opposed to regular licensing of software, right? So we are a subscription-based software as a service platform catering to these huge players in the industry. And we are generating 334 jobs from a 10 million investment coming into a PropMix through EB-5 capital raise. and that gives us a very good job cushion. And Mona, you can cover on what is the benefit of having that kind of a job cushion.
Right. Well, 10 million, 20 people, you require at least 200 jobs. So you have a good 134 jobs more. And that's the advantages of these type of projects, whether it's something like yours or manufacturing, infrastructure, we tend to see more jobs. So in that respect, it is more secure that we know your green card is going to be coming, because there are more jobs created. So the second thing that we look at, Umesh, when people are going into EB-5, they look at the ability to create jobs in the security of the green card. They're getting the actual green card, but then they look and they want to see about the security of the return. What kind of returns are you looking at with this type of project that you have?
Absolutely. I mean, we are from a business plan for the company. With this fundraise, we are planning to generate $195 million in revenue over the next 5 years, with a margin about 30% margin within that revenue, and we expect to generate about $52 million in a 5-year profitability. Right, that will kind of kick up the valuation for the company very rapidly. We have proof of this from the fundraise that is happening in the industry currently. You can see the market is really hard in terms of fundraise for companies like us. These are our competitors in the market. There is RE-Mind, there is Reonomy. RE-Mind plays in the residential real estate, Reonomy in the commercial real estate, House Canary, Ojo Lab. These are all direct competitors of what we do, and also called out the products that they compete with against our products. And they're able to raise this kind of funding, a total of 48 million, 69 million, and so on and so forth here. This is obviously based on proven business plans, and already the market is heating up like crazy. Right? The $4 billion investment that is going into PropTech, these are the places where it is going, and these are direct competitors. And we have been getting a lot of interest from the VC community, but we believe EB-5 Capital opens up a very interesting opportunity for us, as well as for the investors coming into the company. Right?
That's right. Because people often ask, well, why EB-5 Capital? Well, there's 2 or 3 reasons here. First of all, because you are Indian owned, you have a lot of people who are looking to you for support to help them get their green card, and they have a trust in you. And this is one way that you can help them. But more importantly, that EB-5 Capital is non-dilutive. So you do retain all the hard work, that you get actually the benefits of all the hard work. You get the investment without having to dilute your equity.
Absolutely right. That's right. I mean, that is very attractive to us as a business to get debt funding.
Right. But Ramesh, my next question is that a lot of tech projects use convertible notes, allowing a person to go from debt to equity. Would you be considering that, or is that really not in comparison into what you actually thought about with going into using EB-5 equity in the first place?
No, we are very much open to providing conversion to our investors to participate in the long-term growth of the company. At the end of the green card processing period, we would love to offer a discount to buy into our equity in the company. Being the early investors with us in the company, we'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of come participate with us. Right? So by the time the green card processing is over, there's already a proof point that you have seen the company run successfully and generate the revenues that we are targeting for. So, and it'll be an opportunity for our investors to buy in at a discounted equity price at the time. Yeah.
Right. So, and what you're trying to show is that if this is a good time, because PropMix is so new, it's just like buying into Uber or to Airbnb prior to the big sort of explosion that they had.
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I meant by the discount. Exactly. So you get to kind of get a much better price on buying the stock as opposed to buying in an open market. Right.
Great. Well, I have a few questions for you, but Sakir, how are we for time? Because I wanted to just quickly talk about what the changes are that we're expecting in November.
We are good on time, Mona. You can go ahead, please.
So quickly, very, very quickly, these are upcoming changes to the EB-5 program. These are not legislative changes. These are regulatory changes. They've come in by regulation, and we have, as an industry, been fighting them for the last several years. And we do have draft legislation out there, and we are hoping we're going to get this draft legislation passed, maybe not in this November, but by December or January. But we do have enough support on both houses of Congress. I almost said Parliament there, forgetting which country I'm in. uh, anyway, the point that we need to understand, though, is that these are coming in. It's not like, oh, these may come in. No, these are happening. Some are good, some are not so good. Very, very briefly, we have upcoming changes in security for investors. So USCIS and SEC have increased security, and there's going to be more implemented by next year, announcing things like mandatory site visits and audits of how the investors' money is spent. Umesh, that's good for projects like yourself, right? Because you're a genuine project. You don't want to be associated with any project which is not doing what it's supposed to do. How would you manage if somebody from USCIS came in and gave a site visit or gave you an audit and asking you how you would spend the investors' money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have complete accounting on the books. We have a CPA who takes care of all this accounting work and reporting, etc. So that all the compliance perspective, we have all the legal help we need as well, right? So all our papers are open, and we plan to also conduct periodic open conversations with our investors to be transparent about how their money is getting spent and what kind of revenue we are generating from the project. When I say project, in PropMix and our profitability kind of information out there, right? So, and that should give not for regulatory purposes. We are ultimately answerable to the investors, not to USCIS or ACC, really, right? So, and that's the way we see it. Yeah.
Thank you. So the next big change, which is the major change which affects most investors, is the changes in the investment amount. Understand that 500,000 seems a lot of money, but in comparison to the rest of the world, it is less. And the minimum investment amount going up to 900 is a little bit more on par. But what people don't understand is that it's not just the 900 which is changing; it is the TEA designation, which is something that, again, the industry has been fighting. Currently, the TEA designation can be gerrymandered to allow places like Manhattan to utilize the lower investment threshold. And the new rules take all of that away from the local states and bring it back into the hands of USCIS, who can basically decide where there should be a TEA and where there shouldn't be a TEA. That would mean that most places in the big cities would not be at the 900 range, they would be at the 1.8 range. And 1.8 million is really out of the realm of many EB-5 investors. So that is not such good news, and that's why we're seeing this huge rush right now between now and November 21st for people to file whilst it's still at 500,000. Other upcoming changes are more technical, relating to source of funds, allowing EB-5 investors to retain their priority date in certain circumstances, etc. This is not the forum for all of those. I just wanted to just briefly mention it. But getting back to some of the questions I wanted to ask you, Umesh, I know we're running out of time and people do have questions. Is what are the challenges if the upcoming amount goes up to, well, not if, once the upcoming amount goes to 900 and you actually maintain a TEA designation, how would you spend TEA 900 as opposed to 500,000? Would you face any major challenges?
No, actually, we are targeting for a particular target amount to be raised for the company as opposed to number of investors. So if there is additional funding, we have plans, marketing plans and growth plans for the company for the next, even though we have documented for 5-year growth plan here, we have a longer term plan for the company. We're one of the broadest players in the space as opposed to any niche players out there. We've been in the industry for 17 years now. So we know how this works, and we have a much bigger, larger, broad vision on real estate, and that's what we're executing on. And that's one of the reasons why we are not also taking a lot of VC funding, because VCs typically come with their vision of a very quick money out of the company as opposed to a longer term growth opportunity here, right? So, and we do have plans for marketing, sales, as well as new product development, a whole lot of new product development to happen as well. So that's how we plan to utilize. Yeah.
If Umesh, if we have a recession, everybody's talking about a recession next year, and then we are due for one coming. I don't know it's going to be as big as the one in 2008, but if there's a recession tomorrow, how does that affect your particular project?
Yeah, good question, Monam. The recession is coming, and that's what I hear from multiple sources as well. May not be as big as 2008. That was an exception. The expectation is that it'll be more along the recession that we experienced in the 90s. That is the kind of size expected this time around. But we, in our case, we are driven by the real estate sales, and refinancing is what drives us. Real estate sales is only about 20% of our business, right? 80% of the business comes from real estate refinance that happens, right? So the refinancing market is not so much directly connected to the actual selling and buying of real estate, right? People might hold off and they might start renting their properties a whole lot more, right? Or even homeowners might not sell as opposed to renting out their properties, and the rental industry starts going up compared to the sales side, the selling and buying side of the industry, right? But we cover end to end, and that is back to the point that we are a broad player in the space. We are not a niche player, so that's what gives us the ability to survive a recessive market as well. Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting, because again, this is one of the advice that we give our many investors, that always look for a project that will survive during a recession. Because for the next 5 to 8 years, we do not know what's going to happen, and whether we'll hit one recession or two. And a big luxury building is not the big winner if there's a recession tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I mean, people will be fleeing.
Right.
Yeah. There are only a few markets that can survive through a recession. One is the government, right? One is doing business with the government.
Yeah. Do companies like WeWork and Zillow, do they affect those type of big tech projects? Or do they affect PropTech?
Actually, I should say that part of our 17-year history is we have been a vendor to some of these large players in the market as well, right? We being not PropMix, but we have a 17-year history in the market as another company, and we spun off PropMix about 4 years back, leveraging all the success that we had, right? So we do have deep relationships in the space, in the real estate industry. A lot of the big names that you hear in the market, we have a relationship in almost each of those companies out there, right? So we compete with them, we partner with them, and they're also our customers, right? So, and that's how this industry works. When you want to play big, you cannot say everybody is your enemy, right? So you got to have friends in the market, and that is why we think we can pretty easily survive, and it is easily executable for us because of the relationships we have built for a long period of time.
Well, that's good to know. And I think as technology continues to permeate every facet of business, the lines investors will draw around what they will support really become increasingly blurred. I think the new wave will not necessarily jump to the traditional real estate hotel projects. I think our time is up, Sagir. So do we have questions?
Yeah, sure, Mona. We had a few that came in. And
great.
1 second, I'm going back to that. All right. So there were a few questions that came in from the participants early before they joined the webinar as to what they were looking for. A lot of those questions got answered by you, Mona, about the EB-5 process, the scope of the activities, who covers within a family, and all that. There are a couple of questions which I think are very relevant from from the discussion that we had so far. So what is the backlog that we are seeing from those investing from India, and how does that affect our chances when we apply now?
Okay. So quick about the thing about the backlog, the big B bad word. So the situation is that the way Congress has done all of the e-visas is that they have allotted a certain quota to each country, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. EB-5 is no different. There are 700 visas allocated to each country. However, unlike other areas, these 700, the way the language is in the regulations and the law, it should be 700 investors, and it's not 700 investors at all. It's basically 300 investors because the rest is being taken up with family independence, which we are fighting very, very, tooth and nail. We are hoping, we have litigation going on, we have fights in Congress, and we're really hoping that we can take this dependence out of the quote 700 quote, because what's happening is right now with the backlogs in EB2 and EB3, which are getting worse and worse. EB2 right now is 75 to 100 years. That's what Charlie Oppenheim, who is the head of the chief of the State Department, had quoted just earlier this year. That's how bad the backlog is in EB2 and EB3. So that it's just unrealistic. That's why we are seeing such a rush in EB-5. But EB-5 is now getting backlogged. So the current backlog has been estimated at between 3, 5, and 8 years. You're hearing all of these numbers float around. Nobody can say for sure exactly how and what the numbers are going to be, because numbers do fluctuate and they are only estimates. But once we do see the backlog in EB-5 going down as opposed to the way the backlog in EB-2 and EB-3 went up. And one of the main reasons is not only the fact that we are pushing to get the dependents taken out the quota, which, by the way, if draft legislation comes through, is going to be part of that bill, but also because in future the demand is not going to be as high because of the increased investment amount. 500,000 was an amount not a lot of people could afford. 1.8 and 900 is not. Still, if you're worrying about a backlog, yes, you will see a backlog right now. I would personally put my dollars on the fact that the backlog will disappear, but not anytime soon. Maybe we will have a backlog for the next 2 years. And then once all of this whole shuffling about TEAs and numbers and everything has died down, I do think that we will be able to fight and we will be able to get more visas in this category, basically because it's bringing in $3 to $5 billion a year. And that's a substantial amount. And of course, the government would like to use this money for their own projects too. So in return for for getting more money, I'm sure they will give us more visas. So the way that works is that, say it's a 5-year wait, and you have a 2.5-year wait for your case to be processed. After your case is processed, that you should be in a project which you feel secure for 2 things. Number one, that the investors, the developers are not going to redeploy your funds into a, say, new real estate project that you have no say in, or that there is a high risk. Yep, there we are. So if you can see from this immigration process timeline, the time that you'd be waiting is after the little first yellow block, or step 1, the USCIS decision. At that point, you would probably, if you applied today, would probably have an additional 3 years to wait before you could file for your conditional green card. And that would mean an overall period of an increased 2 to 3 years that the developers would have your money. And this is why you really need to be with a development that is you feel comfortable with, and that you understand that the developers are really looking after your money in a very responsible manner. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, Mona. Umesh, the next question is for you. We talked about the competition or some of the other companies in the real estate technology market. How do you differentiate? How does PropMix differentiate from the competition?
Yeah, sure. See, our focus, the two sides to it: our vision and our technology. All right. So what we are after is building a really long-term relationship between homeowners and the agents and the mortgage agents who work with them, and also helping homeowners with those key decisions to make, right? And those are the large, high-level visions kind of a capability that we're after, right? So we have a deep knowledge of the market. We have gathered data from across the country on various data points. We have relationships with MLSs, which are so hard to get. We have 420 plus relationships with different MLSs and 3,000 plus counties in the country. We gather data from all of them, and we have an engine, an artificial intelligence and machine learning, deep learning engine, which is able to use all this data to extract key insights from there. All right, and there are two core technology differentiators for us from all our competition. Right. So if you look at competition that is raising anywhere from $30 to $80 million currently, these are two things that stand out clearly, which are huge platform level differentiators for us against our competition. Right. So we have 33 terabytes of images across the country, which is about 50 million properties of images. So you give us a property address, and we have images of inside and exterior of that property, right? And using that, we've been able to develop a very interesting image recognition capability that is able to enrich, improve data, as well as automate a whole lot of business processes within the mortgage side and the appraisal side of the world, right? Another second key point here is a unique investment model we have created, using which, given a target investment profile for somebody, we're able to make a recommendation on a particular property or a particular market, meaning this is a neighborhood in which you can buy a home and rent it out if you want to, right? So that is your investment target. And like I was saying earlier in another conversation with Mona, there is no capability today. If you go to investment manager like a Charles Schwab or Fidelity, etc., who manages your wealth, none of them are going to give you advice on what to do with your largest investment, which is your home, right? Nobody gives advice, and that is where we are able to distinguish ourselves. That's another major differentiator. There was a lot of noise there. Hopefully, you guys got what I'm saying.
Yes, we are able to hear that. And one more question for you, Mona. Who validates the job creation aspects of the project? Does the investor have to do it?
We get an independent, right? We get an independent economist to validate the job creation. USCIS allow 3 different methodologies. They Implan, RIMS2, and Redine. We use the Redine method for this particular area, this industry. The Redine method draws from job creation all around the country. The economist that we use is Jeff Carr most of the time, and he's one of the most, he's a veteran really in this area. So we have, and he's dealt with many USCIS RFEs, etc. So we really have no doubt on it. And at the same time, we do allow for that large job cushion. We insist on it, in fact, just because we just never know which part of the financials that USCIS suddenly will say they're not going to count towards the job creation. So even if they decide that they're going to take a third away, we still have enough jobs there to make sure that there's enough jobs for everybody.
All right, thank you. And Umesh, there is a question about the IP that PropMix has.
Yeah, that is kind of a topic that I was just covering. Hopefully, I answered that question in terms of our image recognition and the investment models that we have. That is the primary differentiator for us. And those create huge barriers to entry for other competitors to come and play against us, right? So I hope I covered that question secure.
Yes, Suresh. I think that's all the questions we have received from the participants. If there are any more questions, you can send them to us at EB-5@propmix.io. I will be more than happy to respond to them. I think that brings us towards the end of this webinar. Thank you, Mona and Umesh, for an enlightening session on EB-5 program and why they should consider PropMix as their EB-5 investment project. I'm sure the participants now have a good understanding of the process and why PropMix is a good EB-5 investment opportunity. That we wrap up this webinar. We hope you enjoyed the session. Once again, thank you for joining us.